Good evening. I'd like to welcome you to our Monday, August 27th meeting of the Fort Huron City Council. We'll begin this evening with the invocation given by Reverend Richard Sheldon, Riverside Tabernacle Church of God. I'll ask you to stand for that and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
There's an old adage that many people live by, that it's easier to get forgiveness than permission. But I got permission to give this announcement for the mayor. This is our 70th year in existence in the community. We started 1937, 10th Street, just south of the railroad tracks. We're now in North River Road in Fort Gratiot. And September 15, 16 is our 70th weekend celebration, 70th year. At 5:30 on Saturday afternoon, the 15th, we're having a reception for all friends and community and members. You'd be welcome to come. It's in the Family Life Center Gymnasium. And after that, we'll go to the sanctuary for time of remembrance. And Sunday morning, September 16th at 10 o'clock, the son of the man who organized our church 70 years ago will be our guest speaker. And so again, if you'd like to attend, we'd be happy for any of you to come and be with us. Let us bow our hearts for prayer, please. O Lord, our Lord, how excellent is your name in all the earth. The earth is the Lord's, and the fullness thereof, and they that dwell therein. We confess there is one God and one mediator between God and man, the man Christ Jesus. From everlasting to everlasting there is one God, and there is none other. Thank you for your grace that provides us with unmerited favor. And thank you for your mercy that protects us from deserved judgment. May it be the desire of our people to return to the God of our fathers. We are without question a blessed people. Thank you for people who are willing to serve the community with their time and talent, such as our city council. Your requirement of leaders is to do justly, love mercy, and walk humbly before you. We are to trust in the Lord with all of our hearts and lean not to our own understanding, but in all our ways acknowledge you. You will direct our path. Let us be reminded when we make decisions that are contrary to your character and purpose, we cannot expect your blessings. So I pray may the words of our mouths and the meditation of our hearts be acceptable to you, Lord, our Redeemer. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pastor. We'll take the roll, please.
Councilmember Fisher?
Here.
Councilmember Haynes?
Here.
Councilmember Jacobs? Councilmember McCullough?
Here.
Councilmember Neal?
Here.
Councilmember Sample Wynn? Here. Mayor Kutcher?
Present. Council, you have in your packet the minutes of our last meeting, August 13th. Is there a motion to approve? So moved. And moved. Is support?
Support.
Hearing no additions or corrections, the minutes will stand as read. We have one presentation this evening.
Yes, Susan Watkins and Tweet Keziah from Keziah Watkins will present the results from the June budget roundtable sessions.
Very good.
Good evening, Council. I'm Tweet Keziah. This is Susan Watkins, and we're grateful and privileged to be with you tonight to give you the results of the two roundtables. We'd like to begin by expressing great thanks to the 201 members of the Fort Huron area community who took the time to provide thoughtful guidance to all of us in terms of solving the problems that are facing the city. I'd like to particularly also recognize Jeff Stevens, an intern who was present at every single roundtable and helped with immeasurably with support. So thank you, Jeff. In terms of our charge, it was your charge to us that we ask the citizens of Fort Huron and other people who do not live in the city but are in the Fort Huron area, their perceptions and their preferences and their ideas for solving the funding problem that's facing you in terms of how to fund continuing funding the CSO, combined sewer operation. We did not ask for, nor did we expect to get a budget recommendation. That is next. What we're here to deliver that we asked in terms of how people would like us, like you, to approach solving the problem. In finding out what people preferred, we considered several different options. We could have done a survey. We could have done a series of workshops. We could have done a public forum. We settled on roundtables for a variety of reasons. First of all, we wanted to make sure that people were not intimidated, that they were in settings. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, is that better? Okay, thanks. We wanted to make sure that people were in settings that were comfortable for them, where they felt not intimidated but able to easily speak, not only to us but to each other. So that meant a smaller group setting. Equally important, issues of this kind of complexity require a lot of background information. So we wanted to make doubly certain that people had the ability not only to give us their opinions, but to develop judgment about those issues. And that requires several components. The first of those is in-depth information. So lots of information beyond just headline level. Second of all, the ability to clarify that information. If there's something I don't understand, give me a few minutes so that I can ask a question and make sure I understand the information you're giving me. And third, and equally if not more important, the ability to hear from each other, so that my perspectives, I think most people assume that they have sort of a consensus opinion and what they believe is what most people believe, but often the interchange among citizens is what really matters. So the ability to hear from other people, those three things are the components that drive informed judgment as opposed to opinion. So that's why we decided on roundtables as the public forum. Okay, next slide, please. Because some decisions about CSO funding will affect people all over the area, you made the decision that the roundtables should be open to anyone who wanted to participate, that Port Huron citizens, your responsibility was primarily to the citizens of this city, but that you didn't want to still any voices from people who might work in the city or own property or business in the city but live elsewhere. So the roundtables were open to anybody who wanted to participate. We tracked the responses separately so that we could make sure to give you back any distinct differences in what people had to say between the city residents and those who live somewhere else. The responses you can count on as reliable. The people who participated, there were 201. The people who participated were not a valid random sample of the demographic population of the city of Port Huron nor the Port Huron area, because we let people sign up at will and didn't try to screen for one kind of population or another. However, despite the fact that it's not a random sample, you may consider these results valid because of the numbers of people and the representative sample that they are. You can assume reliably that that population represents the thinking of a broader population within this area. So the results are reliable but not statistically random sample valid. Okay. Let's see. Thank you. You established some givens at the beginning of this process. Some of those dealt with the need to look long-term and not do a short-term, one-year, two-year fix, that it needed to be a longer-term fix. Second of all, that you would honor and respect the regulations that you are required to comply with, including the sources of funding that could be applied to CSO. So there are some restrictions on that. You can't just take any money from anywhere and use it. It has to be applicable to use with CSO issues. Third, some of those issues, some of those givens dealt with process, and that's that it would be open, the process itself would be open to anyone who wanted to participate, and that the final decision would be yours. Those givens established the fence within which the discussion would occur. Next slide, please. The venues, we were fortunate enough to be hosted by a number of local agencies. We're very grateful. They often kept themselves open after hours to accommodate the roundtables, and we're very grateful for that. But as you can see, they were spread around geographically so that we tried to establish a comfort level in neighborhoods where people would know where the location was and be comfortable going there. Next slide, please. Thank you. The specifics. We had 10 daytime and evening sessions from June 11th to June 28th. 80% of the people who participated were city residents. 20% were non-city residents. We had 244 people who signed up to attend, and 201 actually participated. That's an attrition rate of about 18%. That's about average. There are some communities we've worked in where there is a lower attrition rate, a higher percentage of people who show up, and we've also worked in places where there's a higher attrition rate and fewer people show up. So it was about what we might expect. The people who showed up were pretty much evenly divided between men and women, and the age range was a little higher than the average population of Port Huron, but not a lot. And we did have good representation from younger people, younger citizens. So we feel like we had a really good representative sample of people in the community. The responses were documented in two ways, and the questions were the same in each case. We began with the format of the discussion was we began with, in most cases, not all groups experienced this, but in most groups we went around the room first and asked for a question that Susan will review the full answer with. And then we gave information, and then we began discussion. The discussion questions were the same as those that were filled out in the response form. So we had multiple ways for people to tell us what they thought, both written and verbal. We had, of the 201 participants, 183 forms were returned, so not everybody filled out a form right there. Most people did, and we tried to discourage anybody taking a form home to return later because they usually don't, and so we didn't get forms from everybody, but we got, a really good sample. You will hear, when we get into results, you will hear a very high degree of consistency about what people had to say. There wasn't complete agreement, of course, on everything, but there were such consistent messages that we think you will hear over and over again some things that people had to say with each question. There is a summary report which contains the information we're going to convey now. There is also an appendix report. And in this one, we documented everything everybody said with notes on a flip chart as the discussion was occurring and with written comments on their reforms. So everything is in here. Every single word everybody said is in here. It is kept in two ways. It is kept by question, so that appendix report has question by question what was said in every group, and it is also by group. So if you want to go through and see what a particular group said, it's kept that way as well. So everything is in here. Let's see. I think we're ready for the next slide. And we're ready for Susan.
We opened the majority of the roundtables with an introductory question. This question was posed without providing any background information. We wanted to know from people basically what their beliefs and opinions were about what they value most in living in the Port Huron community and what they'd like to see changed. So the question that was posed as the opening question, as I say, in most of the groups, was using no more than a word or short phrase, please name one thing that you value most about life in Port Huron and one thing you'd change if you could. So the responses to the question about what people value most, overwhelmingly, the most frequently mentioned, and this is, the results are by frequency of mention, and I need to clarify that some people mention 3 or 4 things. They may have said, I love the water, I love that I have recreation on the water, and I love my neighbors. So if they gave us 3 things, we divided those 3 things by topic. So the results overwhelmingly show that people value most the water and the waterfront, with 29% of the mentions dealing with water and waterfront. Location was mentioned 12% of the time. Friendly people was mentioned 12% of the time. Small town atmosphere 10%. Recreation 8%. Safe 7%. Sense of community 5%. Beauty 5%. Neighbors 4%. Quality of life 4%. And family 4%. You can see by the breakdowns that about half of what people value deal with the physical characteristics of this community, which is in our experience very unusual. It's not usually that high that it's focused on the surrounding physical attributes. As I said, people mentioned water, they mentioned recreation on the water, they mentioned the beauty. So there was a big focus on physical attributes, and about half of the other responses dealt with the community character, like small town atmosphere, friendly people, or sense of community. Next slide, please. When it came to what people would change, the results, again, very clear. 17% of the mentions dealt with changing downtown. People want it to be a strong retail center. People said they want it to be more of a community gathering spot. They want it to be a draw for tourists. So those were some of the comments related to downtown. So downtown was mentioned most often. The economy was mentioned second. That was 15%. When people talked about the economy, as you can imagine, they talked about just generally having a stronger economy that produced a stronger revenue base for the community. 11% also talked about the need for more employment, more jobs, better quality jobs. So those two were closely related. 15% of the mentions dealt with changes at city government. People talked about concerns about how their tax money was spent by the city. Others talked about what they perceived to be a lack of direction, a lack of imagination, and a lack of responsiveness to citizen needs by city government. Some spoke, 14% said they would change community attitudes. And within that topic, they talked about the need for more openness to change in this community, that this community in many ways is stuck in the past and not open to new ideas and new approaches. A lot of people talked about the need for collaboration among and between government agencies and also among community organizations and agencies. So a strong interest in collaboration and openness to change. 10% of the people said they would change tourism. They would like to see more tourism in the Port Huron community. People talked about the wonderful location that you have on the water and what an asset that is. They spoke of the lack of tourism as sort of a missed opportunity, if you will. A number of folks said, look what other communities are doing, and they don't have nearly the assets we have with, look out the window, look at the assets we have. I remember one gentleman said, heck, look at Frankenmuth. It's in the middle of a cornfield, and they draw thousands of people there. So we need to work together, and we need to make this happen. Other people mentioned Lexington about, you go up there on a Sunday afternoon, and it's crawling with people downtown, and we're not. So a lot of interest in tourism. And the responses to this question really set the stage for the responses throughout the roundtables. It really, the issues were clarified immediately through this question. Next slide, please. The second question we asked was, effectively solving Port Huron's financial crisis will take a balance of both city service reductions and water and sewer rate increases. Please indicate on your form what you believe to be the best balance between service cuts and rate increases. The purpose of this question was to get a relative sense from participants about what should be emphasized when considering how to solve this CSO problem, whether the city should emphasize service cuts or water and sewer rate increases. People could pick any percentage combination from 100% through cuts in service to 100% through water and sewer rate increases. For instance, one participant may have said, I want 10% cuts in service and 90% cuts in rate increases. Another may have said, I want 80% through cuts and 20% through rate increases. So they could pick any percentage within that, those parameters. This chart is by frequency of mention. 50 participants said they would like to see a higher percentage through cuts in service. 46 participants said they would like to see a higher percentage through rate increases. You'll note that there's a very high response rate. More people, this is going to sound backwards, more people didn't answer the question than did. And we noticed that after the first couple of groups, we were seeing that that question was blank on response forms, and we were puzzled by that. So we asked some of the people as they turned in their form if it was blank, may we ask why you didn't answer this question? We got a couple of responses. Some people said, oh gosh, I didn't realize that was a question. I thought that was just part of the instructions on the form. So part of it was the way the form was laid out, unfortunately. Others said, that question is too hard. I just couldn't answer it. I didn't know how to answer it. It's too tough. So there was a very high non-response rate on that question. Next slide, please. There was a strong message from the discussion, though, related to this question, that participants don't see this as a simple 50-50 solution. They see it as much more complicated. The highest percentage of individual, or the highest number of individual percentages was a 50-50 split. But again, people didn't see it as a simple 50-50 solution. They talked about this really needs to be, a lot of solutions need to be considered as you look at solutions to this problem. By a slightly higher degree, city residents preferred a greater funding through service cuts, and slightly, and relatively speaking, non-city residents preferred a greater degree through rate increases. Again, that was very slight, but there was a difference. Next slide, please. On the response form, there was a list of city services supported through the general fund. And we asked people this question. Please take a look at the list of city services and rank the 5 most important to you. You can see that the first tier of services that are most important to people is very clear. These were compiled from a ranking of 1 to 5 on a weighted scale. So given that weighted scale, the most important service was fire EMS response with 579 total points. The next was police, patrol, and detectives with 537. And the third was police, fire, dispatch with 298. You can see after that first tier, it drops off considerably to the second tier. Light enforcement with 140, parks 129, lighthouse beaches of 109, McMorran 97, and museum 85. Next slide, please. On this slide, we have left the fire EMS response on there only to show you the relativity of this third tier of responses. Remember, number one was fire EMS response at 579. We left that on to show you relatively how much lower these lower ranked services are. Palmer Park at 65, going all the way down to other recreation services at 23. Again, city, non-city residents, there was considerable agreement there. The top three services in importance were in agreement between city and non-city residents. Fire, EMS response, police patrol detectives, police fire dispatch, agreement for those top three. Blight enforcement was ranked fourth by city residents, but eighth by non-city residents. So city residents, as you might expect, are more concerned about the physical well-being of the community, of the city, than perhaps non-city residents might be. Next slide, please. We also ask, please rank from 1 to 5 any services you believe the city should no longer provide. Now, what you'll see with this ranking is much less extreme and more of a gradual ranking of services. Marinas were ranked first to eliminate at 278, followed by animal control at 254, McMorran at 248. I won't read off all the numbers, but then public information and complaint, DARE officer, blight enforcement, and community services officer. Again, these were ranked on a 1 to 5 on a weighted scale. Next slide, please. Again, we've put marinas at 278 on this slide just so you can see the relationship between the very top ranking and the other service elimination rankings. So police and fire dispatch at 126 went all the way down to police and patrol detectives, a ranking of 5. Next slide, please. Again, city and non-city residents agreed on the top 3 of the 4 to eliminate marinas, animal control, and McMorran. But people were very clear subsequently or before this in the discussions about service eliminations. The message we got very clearly was just because we may rank a service low or high for elimination doesn't mean we want to get rid of it. Find other ways to deliver this service. We value this service, but it doesn't mean the city has to provide it. For instance, people were very interested in accessing marinas as part of community life, but they don't think the city should be paying for marinas. They think they should be sold or privatized or fees cover the cost or something, but it doesn't mean they don't value marinas. Same thing with animal control. People said we need it, but we can't afford it. Let's have the county. Let's just use the county animal control services. It'll be a decreased level of service, but that's okay. About McMorran, clear value of McMorran by the people who participated, the majority of people who participated in the roundtables. There were a few who said, oh, we don't need it, get rid of it. But they were a very, very few. They said, make it self-sustaining. Privatize it, do something else, but it's time to end the city subsidy and keep it in the community. We need it, but find another way to deliver that service. With blight enforcement, people made suggestions about have other inspectors do blight enforcement inspections as they're doing their duties. Or police and fire dispatch, people overwhelmingly supported the thought of joining central dispatch instead of the city having its own dispatch system. People talked about, for instance, on youth sports, cooperate with the Y, don't duplicate. They do services for youth, we do services for youth. Let's see how we can work together to provide those. We'll talk about all of these themes throughout our presentation because, as Tweed said, there was a high degree of consistency in what we heard. Next slide, please. In comparison, those services ranked highest and important and lowest to eliminate, as you could imagine, they mirror each other overall. Police, fire, parks, lighthouses were ranked high importance, but also lowest as services to eliminate. McMorran Place was the one area in particular that ranked relatively highly on both lists. Again, people said it's very important for this community to have that for a lot of reasons. It's part of our heritage. It's a community gathering place where we can have high school graduations. It's really important to the health of downtown, and downtown is very important to us. But we don't think it's appropriate anymore to have a city subsidy. It needs to be self-sustaining. We need to find another way to have that in the community without city funding. So, let's see. Tweed.
The next area we explored was possible fees for service. So the question that we asked was, please list any city services that you believe should be funded to a greater degree with fees paid by users. Remember that filling out this form followed discussion. So there was a lot of discussion about appropriate fees. But if you look at how high recreation came out at 126, and then it drops to 50, and this is by, again, frequency of mention. So this is the number of responses to should there be increased fees, or can you think of any areas where there should be new or increased fees? Recreation was overwhelmingly first. It's not that people believe there shouldn't be fees for other services, but recreation, they're very clear that it doesn't come close enough to covering the cost of service. The marinas are second at 50, parks third at 35, and that means that paying for park facilities or park use. McMorran, again, is 32, museum 24, and beaches 20. So, yes, there are fees that people believe should be applied. Next slide, please. Thank you. People did not say directly how they arrived at those conclusions, but discussion, we feel we can responsibly tell you that the following kinds of considerations were applied. First of all, these are services that people value but do not consider essential, like public safety, fire, that kind of thing. These are services that people do not want to lose, that are nice to have, that they want in the community, but they feel that people could responsibly be asked to pay for them and pay a higher rate than they currently do. Second consideration was cost of service delivery. What's the gap between what people pay now, if anything, and how much it costs the city to deliver that service? That was something people took into consideration when they told us what they thought about this. And third, there was lots of conversation about, well, so-and-so charges more for that, and, so-and-so charges for this, and that other municipality charges, so we should too. So those kinds of things were things that people took into account as they developed that list. Again, part of the consideration in the conversation was people understand that if you raise fees on certain programs, recreation was one specifically mentioned, particularly youth recreation, that could price some families out of the market, and they were not willing to do that. But rather than keep all fees low, their solution was to establish a scholarship program. So, and that came up any number of times in any number of groups. So the answer is not to price people out, but to make sure there's a way to serve everybody who wants to participate. Next slide, please. Marina fees. Again, we talked about the need for fees because more non-city residents use those marinas and boat launch, so that made sense for fees. One really strong finding, there were only a handful of people among all the groups who disagreed with this, that city residents should pay lower fees for the same service than non-city residents. In other words, charge non-city residents more for the same service, and that was consistently said by both city residents and non-city residents. So you can count on that. Additional services offered up were boat launch, flight enforcement, emergency response and dispatch, and parking. And in terms of emergency response and dispatch, it didn't mean that everybody should be charged every time that service goes out. It meant There are some cases where it's what's considered repetitive calls or nuisance calls or calls that are unnecessary. So in tracking those, if it becomes clear there's a really clear pattern, then in that case, think about levying a charge to discourage that kind of overuse. Not yet. Two caveats with this. First of all, people were pretty specific in some groups in talking about how these fees should be administered. Let's see, how could we do a marina fee? Well, let's see, we could have somebody, an attendant at the marina itself, and then somebody else would say, well, wait a minute, how expensive is that going to be? And then they'd start talking about automated systems. So overall, their advice is fees are appropriate, but be careful you don't set up a system to administer the collection of those fees that negates the revenue that you can expect from those fees. So in other words, be careful. The second one is just be aware, bear in mind, that there are non-city residents who already support some city services through their income tax. So just bear that in mind as you talk about fees. Now, next slide, please. Okay, the next question was, please list any city services that you believe the city should contract with others to provide. And you can see, again, there's a clear first choice. This, again, is frequency of mention. 59 people wrote down emergency response and dispatch, believing that that should be centralized. McMorran was the second with 51, marinas 33, recreation 31, museum 14, parks 14, animal control 14. So those are the top things that are on people's minds in terms of contracting out. Next slide, please. Thank you. There is general support for contracting some services where appropriate. Obviously, central dispatch was the greatest. There's a greater degree of support for contracting or privatizing McMorran and the marinas than there is for the museum. There's some support for all three, but there's stronger support for privatization and contracting for the first two, and that's McMorran Place and the marinas. There was a suggestion that from several groups that there needs to be a countywide tax to support McMorran. That's a possibility. It was not we didn't hear it from every person. We did not even hear it from every group. But it came up repeatedly enough so that it's a suggestion that we're passing along. Next slide, please. The next question that we asked was, do you have any suggestions you would like the city to consider in developing solutions to the financial crisis? Totally open-ended, both in discussion and on the forums. The responses both discussion responses and written responses sorted themselves out into two categories. One was how to decrease costs, and the other was how to raise revenue. So in the decreased costs category, we didn't ask people to sort out that way. That's just how the ideas sorted themselves. There were lots of ideas and discussion. These are small numbers. Again, this is frequency of mention. By the time people got to this on the forms, not a lot of people filled them out. But you can see that reconfiguration and reorganization of city services are the first four, with marinas, McMorran, and the museum as the fifth. A regional approach was mentioned. As you know, Susan has covered this earlier. This is one of the repetitive themes you will hear. It was a very consistent message that we got in terms of do not expect the city to solve this problem or other problems or take advantage of future opportunities alone. It needs to be regional. So decreased costs through a regional approach was certainly a strong message. Next slide, please. There were some ideas offered up. Again, remember that the numbers on this written response are so small that you can't draw any strong conclusions from them. So just bear that in mind. There were some responses that suggested that the fire department can close a station or could consider having paid on-call positions, or go to a different shift structure. But again, remember, the numbers are very small, so we cannot tell you that's a strong recommendation across the board. Next slide, please. Again, the last two strong messages were to eliminate city funding and to take a regional approach in eliminating duplications of service and making sure to collaborate in terms of service delivery and problem solving. Next slide, please. This was the increased revenue category, and there was a lot of enthusiasm. You know, at this point, we've discussed different ways for people to pay for different things and different ways of delivering service more efficiently, and, you know, what could we sort of do without, what could we not do without. At this point, people were really excited and optimistic because now we're talking about longer range, we're talking about future ways to raise revenue and make sure that the city can pay for what it needs to pay for. There were, again, relatively few written responses. So if you look at this, the numbers are fairly small. The discussion, however, was pretty consistent, in fact, very consistent with these responses. Economic development is big on everybody's mind. Let's move this. Let's don't just do what we've been doing and expect a different result. So we've got to do something in terms of economic development. We've covered fee increases. That was mentioned again with this response. Third was selling this building. That came up over and over again. And our advice is we are not here to tell you that there is a firm plan that makes sense. What we're here to tell you is that people want you to look at that and make a decision about whether it makes sense or not, and move on one way or another. It's out there. So it's a perception that this city building is an asset that could be located elsewhere. And whether or not that makes sense is something the community needs to know. Next slide, please. Okay. Again, I think we've covered most of that. Again, a multi-pronged approach to economic development. As Susan mentioned, when we began this discussion, we never probed specifically for answers about downtown. They came up on their own in every single group right away. We never said, what do you think about tourism? That came up in every single group on its own. So those kinds of issues are on people's minds, and they want an increased tax base, they want increased businesses, and they'd love to have an increase in population as well, but in visitors for sure. So that's the kind of message that we heard repeatedly. Next slide, please. Excuse me. We heard to some degree in terms of changing the way taxes were levied to pay for this. There were a few people who suggested that there could be a tax revenue dedicated specifically to funding CSO, but that was not an overwhelming suggestion. There was, however, a lot of consistency with the need for a regional approach. Again, the message once again, a collaborative kind of an approach to increase area cooperation. Next slide, please. The last thing we asked was, one of the last things we asked was about sewer and water billing, because as you are well aware, there was cognizance by the city that an increase in rates at the level you're looking at could cause significant hardship among a lot of members of your citizenry. So is there a way to alleviate that? And one of the suggestions was we could go to monthly billing. And there's a cost to that. Obviously, depending on how often you read the meters, there's at least the cost of sending the billing out. So we asked whether, given that situation of a hardship versus an increased cost, where did people come down about whether to change to monthly billing or not? And almost 2 to 1, people said don't change. Keep the billing quarterly. But provide lots of information so that people know that they have the option of paying monthly, even though they don't get a monthly bill, that they have different kinds of options. People suggested paying online. They suggested, budget billing. They suggested all kinds of different methodologies for making things easier for people. But by and large, they said, do not change the way you do billing. Okay.
The final questions on the response form that participants completed dealt with the roundtables themselves. We always ask participants to evaluate their roundtable experience so that we can make roundtables as effective as possible and so that the city can have that information for future reference. The first question we asked, next slide please. There it is right in front of me. How did you hear about the roundtables? Overwhelmingly, people said they learned about the roundtables through the newspaper. They didn't specifically say, some people said the Times-Herald, some people said newspaper. So, we can't tell you exactly, but it was the newspaper overwhelmingly. Again, this is frequency of mention. About 95 people said they found out about it through the newspaper. Some people also said through the city mailings or through city council members or city staff. Some people said they found out about them through other residents. So there was a wide range, but overwhelmingly the source for most people was the newspaper. Next slide, please. We also asked people what prompted you to attend the roundtable. Again, this is frequency of mention. By far, the top reason was concern for an interest in the community. We had comments like, I care about my community, or it's my civic responsibility, or I love this city, or I'm concerned for the survival of the city. So overwhelmingly, the most important reason for people participating was interest and concern for their community. The second most mentioned was to get and to share ideas. Some people said, one person said, I don't have a solution, but I like to hear other people's ideas. So again, as we talked about in informing judgment, people need to hear from each other. People enjoy hearing from each other. Other reasons that people came were specific concerns about rate impacts or specific concerns about service cuts or the city's financial condition. Next slide, please. The third question was, what was of greatest value to you about these roundtables? Overwhelmingly, the highest mentioned was hearing from others. Some people said the open discussion with many good ideas, or great people, great ideas, this could have lasted 20 hours. So people enjoyed hearing from each other. But unlike most evaluations that we get in other communities, people also very highly rank the information that they received at these round tables. People very much appreciated the information. One person said, the greatest value was a chance to hear firsthand about the problem. Another person said, great opportunity to see the issues clearly. And another said, very informative. Now I know a little bit about what I'm complaining about. So people very much appreciated the information. It was very clear. And the third thing that was mentioned most frequently was being heard. And a couple of quotes from participants. One said, I believe I was heard. The other said, the city was willing to put on the roundtables and be interested in what citizens thought. So that was highly valued. Next slide, please. We also asked for any suggestions for improvement. And we always get some. So that's a good thing, I guess. In this case, the highest number were positive comments. Thanks to the city for doing this. Job well done. Some of the comments were, many thanks. This was very enlightening. Another was, information was presented in a great, easy-to-understand manner. And finally, a person said, I wouldn't have missed this opportunity. So people are thankful to the city for doing these roundtables. Suggestions for improvement included limit the speaker's time, or we need more time for discussion. We purposely planned these roundtables for just 2 hours because we didn't want to overly inconvenience people. We were afraid people would not come if we made the roundtables too long. But many people expressed an interest that they would have stayed longer. They enjoyed it. They would have been willing to stay longer. So And then the final category of suggestions for improvement were, as one people said, do it again and more often. Okay, so what did these roundtables tell all of us? Next slide, please. It was very apparent that participants believe that the CSO funding issue is a serious problem with no easy answer. They are looking for solutions that achieve a balance by attacking this problem on multiple fronts. They also see the need for a balance between water and sewer rate increases with cuts in services and in reorganizing and reducing expenses on the part of the city. Some people talked about restructuring and a variety of things. So that's another key point that we've heard over and over. Third, another message was find alternate ways to fund quality of life services like recreation parks and cultural facilities. And the fourth key point we heard was take a long-term view, develop new and collaborative approaches to new revenue generation. And we'll go through each one of these 4 points individually. Next slide, please. On number 1, guarantee essential services. The clear priority, as you'll recall from the most important service ranking, the clear priority to people are public safety services, fire, EMS response, police patrol detectives, and fire and police dispatch. No doubt about that priority. And even with those priorities and with those services, many people are open to looking at alternative ways to provide those services. Some of the ideas we heard, and again, this was not a majority of participants, but just some ideas we heard. Some people said, have you thought about combining the police and fire department into a public safety department? Kalamazoo has done that, and it works. Other people suggested maybe use a combination of full-time firefighters and paid on-call firefighters. Some people said maybe reduce the number of firefighters a little bit and close a fire station. It was frequently mentioned that the city should look at maybe sharing some costs or duties with the county to avoid duplication of services in the public safety area. So again, even in the essential services area, people are open to new ideas, and they encourage the city to investigate other ways of skinning this cat when it came to providing essential services. Next slide, please. In balancing rate increases with city services, there's a general acceptance that some level of a rate increase is inevitable. People understand that the CSO has to be funded and that it'll take a rate increase, again, at some level. There is some widespread concern that a significant increase is would negatively impact people on fixed incomes and people with limited incomes, and there's concern about that. There's also concern by some that rate increase that's too significant may drive people from the community, and that is a worry not only because they're going to lose potentially some friends and neighbors, but the more people that leave the community, those who are left will have a bigger financial burden to absorb. Many expect changes within the city organization. I know on one of the charts Tweed talked about when it talked about decreasing costs, the number of people who offered that suggestion on the response forms was relatively low, but in the discussion it came up over and over again. We are looking to the city. Status quo within the city organization is not okay. We don't want city employees to make more in salary and benefits than the private sector makes. Look at restructuring some city departments. Look at new ways of doing things. So we did hear that over and over again in discussion.
Okay, the final 2 points. The third point was make sure you look at alternative methods for funding services. That includes providing the cost of recreation more heavily through fees. That includes ending the subsidies for McMorran and Place and marinas, and that though McMorran, marinas, and the museum should no longer depend on city subsidies, and to look at contracting and privatizing and collaborative service delivery where it makes sense. Next slide, please. And the fourth one was to take the long-term view and consider new approaches. Be innovative. Develop and take advantage of local assets, and that includes waterfront and downtown. Cooperate regionally. Make tourism a priority, and continue to involve citizens in discussions about city issues. Next slide. Additional issues, if you'll remember, about water and sewer billing. People would like that continued quarterly with additional information to folks so they know they have other options in terms of when to pay. Second, and how to pay. Second, city and non-city consistency was extremely high. There was again, not much discrepancy. We've pointed out to you the blight enforcement ranking, that kind of thing. We've pointed out to you whenever there was a statistically significant difference. Overall, there was high consistency between what people who live in the area said and what your city residents said. Emphasize fees for service and make sure that, that the non-city residents pay more for the same service than city residents. Next slide, please. People are overall optimistic about the future of the community. As Susan said, they understand that the CSO funding problem is severe, and it's significant, and it's going to hurt, and it's complex. They're also confident of the community's strengths and the importance of collaborative leadership on a regional scale in solving those problems and addressing those issues. That concludes the information we're going to give you. We have copies of these slides available right here for anybody who'd like to have one. And of course, we're welcoming questions or comments.
All right, questions?
I guess I don't really have a question. I'm completely thrilled with the results, with the process. I just want to say thank you from us, because this is so, this information is just exactly what we were looking for from all of you. And I just want to say thank you from the City Council for your participation and your help.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I had a question back on question one, the no responses. I know you started to talk a little bit about what the basis of that was, but I was hoping you maybe could elaborate a little bit more. If you've seen this in other communities where people were missing questions, because that seemed to me somewhat of an important question. I know you said that some didn't know how to answer it, but from your past experiences, how did you feel when you started seeing the no responses rolling like that? Because there was quite a few, and I know you started to say that.
It disturbed us enough so that we wanted to know what the problem was. Because as forms were turned in and that question was not answered, we knew there was an issue. And no, that hasn't happened before. And it partly was a result of the format and the layout of the question itself. And it's contained in the report, so you can see the form. And it was evidently easy for eyes to skip over and think that that was part of the instruction. On the other hand, I think people also told us that it was a difficult question to answer because they understand that it's not an absolute. You can't just say 40% cut, 60% rate increase. As you know, people talked about different ways of delivering the same service, so it's not the same as a service cut. So the question was just intended to sort of establish where people would assign the greatest emphasis. But people clearly understood it was a much more complex question and answer than they were prepared to offer up. So I guess my answer personally would be, no, we haven't seen that confusion, but we haven't asked that exact question with this complex an issue before either. And I guess I would hesitate to do it again, given the difficulty people had in answering it.
Once we saw that people weren't filling it out and asked a few people why that was the case, we adjusted the discussion guide and added at the end, before people filled out the response forms, a reminder that there was a question one that some people were missing, and to be sure and to respond to that question. Even after that reminder, some people, it was a lower percentage of people who didn't answer that question, but still some people did not answer it, and some people wrote in, this is too hard, I can't make that judgment, or I don't have enough information. So it was just it was a tough question for people to respond to. Does that answer your question?
It's a tough question.
Other questions?
It's a tough question.
I want to thank you very much. I particularly want, sorry, Mark.
I have one. The city manager gave a presentation before the whole process started at each meeting, right? As I hear your report, and I read this earlier today, do you think his presentation influenced the response that was given by the participants in respect to suggested cuts? I'm seeing answers directed to what he's suggesting. Did you get information from people with their own ideas rather than what the city manager is suggesting?
Sorry. I think not. I think there was certainly an influence in information that people walked into the room not having, and information that they got then that influenced their thinking, as well as conversation with each other that influenced their thinking. What the city manager offered in terms of possible different ways of delivering service or service reductions or reconfigurations were offered, and he was very clear, these are examples. These are not my recommendations. Those were his words every time. And it was very clear that there were some things in there that he would not responsibly recommend. And there were also responses that we got back from people that had nothing to do with anything that he put on the table for consideration. So I would say that while the information that was given had to have influenced people's thinking, I think the results that you got are a result of more than just that information. I think they're a strong result of what people came in believing, and also their experience living in this community, and also from hearing from each other. So I think there are all those components.
Thank you.
I'd like to make a comment about that. One of the things that I think happened as a result of my presentation, I didn't just do a presentation on the budget itself. I picked some comparable cities, and I measured our workforce, our budget, our activities, and compared and contrasted them with other cities. And one of the things that I didn't anticipate from that information was the amount of suggestions we got about the fire department. People were very surprised that the fire department is involved with emergency medical, has many more calls that are involved with emergency medical than structure fires. And I pointed out to them, in the comparative data, that's true in every community. But despite that fact, I think that generated a lot more suggestions about the fire department than we received about others. I think that something about that activity stimulated more thought and suggestions. So it wasn't always exactly what I suggested, but I think that comparison and contrast with the other communities helped them come up with some of the ideas.
Tim? I'm sorry. Sally?
I just wanted to comment, I noticed that many of the suggestions that the participants had were things that we have discussed as council.
Absolutely.
And out of just curiosity, as we were talking about earlier, we were curious how many of you that are in the audience tonight actually attended the round tables? Can we see your hands?
That's what we thought.
Yeah, that's what we thought.
Can we say thank you to all these people?
I just had one other question. You had talked in your original presentation back when we were pitching this idea about how throughout the process you can modulate and maybe change direction in your presentation. Could you outline maybe some of the things that might have happened, or did it pretty much stay standard from the beginning to the end?
Okay. In terms of how we varied the discussion as we went?
Yes.
Yes, okay. This is not uncommon. We've done this almost every time we have a whole series of meetings. There are some cases where time becomes a constraint and you can't, because you're asking too many things, you can't cover everything that you need to cover. In other cases, there are just a variety of reasons. For these roundtables, the first couple of questions that we asked were more open-ended, and we didn't force people into dealing with the immediate service delivery and elimination and those kinds of things that are on the table for right now for the next budget cycle. So people came in and complained about old things and what had happened and where could we go from here and longer term revenue kinds of things. So the first restructure we had to do was we put a list on the wall, starting with about group 2 or 3, that said, we want you to talk about these things first, and then we'll get to the longer range things. And that seemed to help. And we in other words, forced the discussion, we narrowed the discussion more in terms of the questions that we've just read to you about the things we needed responses for before we got to what are some longer range ideas for solutions.
Another change we made, on the introductory question, what do you value most about life in Port Huron? What would you change if you could? There was such a high degree of consistency in the first, say, 7 groups. We were hearing the same things over and over and over again, which is great. But we needed the time to probe other areas, to clarify other topics that people mentioned. And so we eliminated that what do you value and what would you change in the last, I think, 3 groups, and used that time to probe and get more depth on some service delivery issues.
Good. Any other questions? David, I see a question on your lips.
Actually, just a question on the, I believe there are extra copies. Are those available? Is that available for the? Just want to make sure they were aware that they could.
Sure. It probably would be easy. Yeah. Susan? It probably would be easier if you put them on the table so that people as they're leaving could gather them. Okay.
Sure.
I want to thank you very much. I particularly want to thank all the participants that we've had in the roundtable. This obviously is just the start of the process, an important start, and some important discussions go on. I can assure you the council is going to make everything public, open. We're going to find a different location for our workshops. Normally we work upstairs in a smaller room. We'll find an open forum. We invite everyone to come back and participate in those sessions. We are, just so you know, all the participants in the roundtable, I think copies of the report, both the summary and the detailed part, were mailed to them today. The summary? Okay, the summary, thank you. It is online, both the summary and the detail is online through the city website, and copies of both of them will be available in the city clerk's office to look at and at the Port Huron Library also. So thank you very much. We're going to move on to public audiences, and I just want to make sure that everyone understands that if you speak under public audiences, under our rules, we have a 4-minute time limit. However, on our agenda tonight is scheduling of a public hearing on September the 10th. If you come to a public hearing to talk about this, there is no time limit at all. You can talk as long as you want. So for those of you who are going to make comments tonight, we will be invoking our 4-minute rule as we normally do for public audiences. With that, public audiences are open. Anyone wishing to speak before the council, we invite you to come forward. Give us your name and address and remind you have a 4-minute time limit.
My name is Joanne Rumford. I live at 3540 Parkway Drive, Apartment 9 at Continental Court Apartments. didn't know if I would be able to speak tonight, but I was one of the participants in the roundtable discussions. My point, I'm going to make it real quick. I think actually what was said in the final report here wasn't really what was said in the group 7 that I was in. Mainly the fact that it's very knowledgeable. I mean, we learned something from it. But what is being said here tonight is not everything that was said at the meeting regarding the casino, the Bridge Plaza, and most of all, the water situation we have here, the separation. The water sewer separation, which was said was there's too much to talk about in that roundtable discussion, so not much was said about the water sewer separation. My problem is that I'd hate to see Port Huron go down the drain because the townships are building and doing a lot of building because they got the space. And also, I don't want to see us lose the fact that we voted for the casino and the townships get the casino. I'm not saying the casino is going to solve the water situation. It's not going to solve people moving out of the city because there's no jobs. But maybe we can adopt a couple of townships. Maybe, that's my solution. Adopt a couple townships, Port Huron Township, Fort Gratiot Township. We're really getting involved too much with little issues as far. It's not a little issue, actually, when somebody has to lose their job. How many minutes do I got? Okay. So it's not really an issue of that. In the presentation, I did not want to, the roundtable discussion, I did not want to see any jobs cut. I said, I disagree with the jobs cut and services cut, everything. But, you got to draw a line somewhere, right? And you guys are doing it, right? So you guys have to make the decision. You get the report from tonight and what they presented. Thank you, Susan, and thank you, Tweed, very much. I wanted to thank you for hearing what I had to say. Mayor Kutcher, thank you, Carl, for supporting Port Huron and coming back to Port Huron and being in a position where you can make a big difference to Port Huron. Thank you, City Council, for listening to me.
Thank you.
This is David Ellingwood. I live in Peru Village, and I just want to call your attention to a situation that's appearing in a lot of cities, and that is accessible streetlights for the blind and visually impaired people. And as a disabled person with my eyes in that, I strongly urge you guys to adopt these new type of signals in your city. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Mayor Kutcher, City Council. My name is Trina Avedisian, 1419 15th Street. Over the last several weeks, some very disturbing things have come out in a couple Times Herald articles. Disturbing because there is so much going on behind the backs of the very people you serve, the taxpayers of Port Huron. The payoff of Tom Hooka to leave has put a bad taste in the mouths of the people. Trust is a very important thing when dealing with the public from the seats you sit in now. Do you realize how mistrustful people are of you now? Several seemingly untruths have been told during the last year, one of which really stands out. In April of 2006, our mayor was quoted as saying there was no truth to the rumor that Tom Hooka had lost the support of the council and his days were numbered. Then when Mike Connell's story broke about both Mr. Kutcher and Mr. Neal said they had never contacted Mr. Tomian about coming here as city manager. And yet, June 25, 2006, there was an article in the Midland Daily News stating, and I quote, Tomian, 55, said he was not actively seeking a new job but was approached by Port Huron's mayor and mayor pro tem to apply. A little later in the article, Mayor Kutcher is quoted as saying, contract negotiations are underway and he hopes details get worked out by Monday when Port Huron's council will have a special meeting. When did Tom Hooka leave? And it seems like the council worked pretty hard from April 2006 to June 2006 to get the deal done. It seems very planned and calculated from my point of view. Now you are about to embark on a course of cutting our quality of life services and raising our sewer rates to astronomical proportions. How do you expect the people of Port Huron to trust your judgment in this issue? How can you expect the surrounding townships to trust you either? You have not been completely upfront with us from the get-go. If I were sitting in your seats right now, I would send Mr. Tanyan and his staff back to the drawing board and tell them to figure it out without charging the residents any more than the 10.2% you have already raised it this year, and start cutting from the top, starting with the city manager's office. Leave the hardworking police, firemen, and city rec alone. They are good things for this community. There is much fat to be cut at the top, and I'm very sure you can find it. At this point, you are making enemies of our township neighbors, and we can't afford this either. You seem to turn away from things that can help Port Huron become healthy again. I am still waiting to hear what kind of deal you can make with Terra Land Group. I know I have heard the excuse, we can't put our eggs all in one basket, but to be honest, I don't see a whole lot of baskets rushing forward for us to put our eggs in. Don't miss this chance to help Port Huron become more than just the laughingstock of Southeast Michigan. Call Terra Land and invite them here with open arms and a happy heart. I don't think that they will interfere with Atchison Ventures' plans, and they might even be able to complement them. If you do not find it in your hearts to put the welfare of the majority of Port Huron people to the forefront, then you should tenure your resignations as soon as possible and let someone who can lead this city into better times. The damage has been done, and we don't need any more damage to be done from now until the November election. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak before the council this evening? Sir?
My name is Jay Kostick, and I live at 2307 Priscilla Court. And I have basically about the same problem that she has. Nobody's been honest with the people about where we stand. If you look at all these different things and you look through all these different papers, I didn't know, I moved here 10 years ago. I was born here 70 years ago. And I moved away. I'm a disabled veteran. I spent 21 years in the military, Vietnam, and everything else. I come back. This town is in worse shape than it was in 1954. And I can't understand. The downtown, this is no town. It's 24 blocks by 8 miles long. If you want to go to a restaurant, you have to go to Fort Gratiot. There's nothing here. You people have lied. Most of you people have been on this council for 3 or 4 terms. And you haven't told the truth about anything that you're going to do. Back in 2005, the budget was $13 million. Now it's $23 million. We're more in debt now than we ever been. We're paying for the Peerless Cement, the Harrington Hotel. These things have all been gone forever. And what I don't understand is how you can sit there every week and say, I want to approve $5,000 for the road over here, or we got to do this over here. It's in the papers. It's right here. In 2005 budget, and like I said, most of you were still here. It was $85,383,000. The budget this year is $113,909,000. The same things that we're doing every day, we're still doing. We're paying benefits for the retirees. Like they said about the fire department, the reason that was brought up at the meeting is there's 2 fire stations that are manned, and they're 3 minutes from the main fire department. It takes 3 minutes to get from the main fire department to get to Sanborn, 3 minutes to get from the main fire department to get to 24th Street. So we have to have these fire trucks manned with 3 people. What happens because of EMS and that? 7,000 calls last year, and over 6,000 of them were EMS. This is the problem we're having. 56% of every dollar that we pay in taxes is going for the police department, the fire department, and things like this here. This building should have never been put here. This building cost us $1 million a year. It's going to cost another $300,000 this year because it's falling apart. It costs $800 and some odd thousand a year to have it. We can have meetings like this in McMorran. McMorran either get rid of it, tear it down, or do something with it. The survey that was taken 3 years ago by a company in Toronto that you people paid $30,000 to come in here for said the 2 best places in Port Huron to build are the parking lots on either side of McMorran. Like I said, Port Huron is 24 blocks long and 8 miles long. And this is the problem we're having. We don't have anything to put people downtown. We need an apartment complex here, just like they have in Canada, with 500 or 600 people living in here. The senior citizens over here on 7th and Pine, where do they go? They have to go to Kroger's on 24th Street. They have to go up to the north end. They can't get transportation all the time. Some of these people aren't eating. This is your responsibility. It's your responsibility to maintain those areas and to have vehicles available for them people. I have known the people waiting 2 or 3 hours to go to the doctor. I've known the people that don't go to the grocery store except once a week when they can get a ride. That's neither here nor there. We're here because of taxes and things like this here. You've got to keep the price of everything down. You can't give people raises every year unless you give them what they give the retirees, and that's 1.3%.
Thank you. Your 4 minutes is up. Okay, thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak before the City Council this evening?
Gene Webb, 2526 Military Street. I just want you to really pay attention to what the report was tonight. And we are tired of water rates going up. You've got to cut the expenses. You can cut all kinds of things when it comes to the payroll. You've got too many chiefs and not enough Indians in the administration. And if you're going to talk about selling the MOC building, sell it. It's prime real estate. Don't give it to Atchison. But I will ask you to please don't sell the marinas. Just privatize them so that they can make money. The private industry will be able to make money off of the marinas. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? Anyone else?
Hello, my name is Michael Plouffe. I live at 2644 Military Street. I've talked with several people who either own businesses or work in businesses in the downtown area, and a frequent complaint I've heard is that the rental rates in that area are astronomical, and I was wondering if there would be any way that the City Council could consider a fee or a tax on vacant businesses in the central business district to put the onus on property owners to encourage the influx of renters. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in the public audiences?
Good evening, Council. Alice O'Neill, Prospect Place, Port Huron. Earl, when you first said that you were going to, suggested doing the consultants, I'm not a person that goes with consultants. I have to say this has been excellent. I'd like to see us do more of it. The ideas exchanged at the roundtables were excellent. And Mark, to answer your question, Carl, going in, I think we just really had no idea of all the facts and figures, and what Carl gave us was facts and figures, so we felt like we had something to work with, so it was a good introduction. Forbes just named Michigan the #1 state for retirees. Capitalize on it. Hopefully our governor doesn't change anything, but the tax benefits for retirees in Michigan are #1 in the country, outside of Florida and Utah, or Nevada was. That's good. I would like to suggest that you consider computerizing the city offices a lot more than what they are. My experience going into different departments, it's almost like working with the old Burroughs machines and the paper cardboard cards that we had and sorted through. I would like to see you merge all this, and then you can bring up different properties and have a whole list of everything of what's happening there. An example was the sidewalk, Mayor Kutcher, that we had on the Flashlight Walk. That house was on the blight list 2 years ago. How did we miss the sidewalk? I just think we could do a lot with a new computerized 2007 system. And lastly, negative thing, but we just had one more head-on collision at my corner. Now, the police department has said they don't have that many records. There's 3 that I've called EMS for, 3 head-ons. Now, Most people that don't make that turn, and it's at night, end up in the park. So they drive away. It's never a two-vehicle collision. It's always, except for one case when they tried to go into the lightship, all the rest have been going south at night and don't make the turn. Now, I know there's a curve sign down below. We talked about this at our neighborhood watch group. The police department says that it's not the corner that's the problem, it's people traveling too fast and the lack of number of officers in Port Huron to enforce. I don't really agree with that. What I would like, I know that it's way too expensive for the city to consider to do anything with that corner right now. However, right now, since the last head-on crash, your street park light goes like this. So it's going to cost the city a good deal of money to repair your park light, which maybe signs could have prevented. Now, what I'm asking for is nighttime reflectors in front of that tree, so people at night know they're going to turn. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
John Prevost, Oak Hill Circle. Mr. Neal asked a question about Mr. Tomian's presentation. I thought his presentation was a little long, but he gave us wonderful information at the meetings, the roundtables. And there was one thing that struck me very, very succinctly. Look at our police department. We have the smallest police department of the cities that he compared. Our recreation department spent the most money, and we have the lowest crime rate. I thought that was very important. We take care of the recreation in this community for our children, and we have a much lower crime rate than any of the other cities that were in these comparisons.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else?
Good evening. My name is Katie Byrne. I live at 825 Prospect Place. I too just wanted to comment on the presentation that the city manager did at the roundtable presentations. I do not feel that Mr. Tomian swayed anyone's opinion on what should be done in our city. I think what he did is expanded what people's choices were. But from the comments that people had when a topic was brought up, it was something that they had talked about before. It was something they had thought about before. It wasn't just, let's get rid of the marinas, and then nothing else was said. People had comments on why. So I would just like to share that with you. The other thing I wanted to just comment on, I see that we're going to be having a public meeting on September the 10th on the presentation we heard tonight. It has been my personal experience in the past that when there was a public hearing scheduled, City Council was also voting that very same night that they were having a public meeting. I personally feel that that gives the impression that Council is not taking into consideration what the public is saying during the public audiences. So I would make the suggestion from my personal experience that if you're having that public hearing on September the 10th, that also later that evening, you're not also going to be voting on anything from those roundtables. Thank you.
Right. Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak before the council this evening? Anyone? Hearing no one and seeing no one, public audiences are closed. We'll move on to our regular agenda. Council, you have before you the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve?
Mayor Kutcher.
Yes.
Move for the adoption of the consent agenda.
Support.
Been moved and supported. We'll take the roll, please.
Councilmember Fisher?
Yes.
Councilmember Haynes?
Yes.
Councilmember Jacobs?
Yes.
Councilmember McCullough?
Yes.
Councilmember Neal?
Yes.
Councilmember Sample Wynn?
Yes.
Mayor Kutcher?
Yes. Consent agenda was approved. As part of that, we confirmed a single lot assessment, two of them. We confirmed, we scheduled a public hearing for September the 10th. Hear the comments on the results of the roundtable. missing?
That was not
Oh, I'm sorry. I had highlighted it for something else. I'm sorry. Scheduled public hearing for September the 10th to hear comments on a code case for 1704 8th Street. We have reappointed Sharon Bender to the Planning Commission and Mike Russell to the Planning Commission. And we appointed James Dewey and Michael Cogley and James McDonald as members of the Zoning Board of Appeals. Announcements. On September 15th is Hobby Fest in Pine Grove Park. On September 16th is Port Huron's Historic Home Tour. And just a reminder to check out our website on Port Huron Sesquicentennial Celebration. With that, we'll move on to unfinished business number 1, please.
Unfinished business number 1 is approving the 2007 amendments to the 2000 update of the St. Clair County Solid Waste Management Plan prepared pursuant to Part 115 of Public Act 451 as amended, and the rules promulgated thereunder for St. Clair County. This item was postponed from your August 13th meeting and is on the floor. There was a motion at that time.
It was postponed because we did not have a copy of the amendments. You have since received a copy of the amendments. Are there any questions relating to the amendments? Hearing none, we'll take the roll, please.
Councilmember Haynes.
Yes.
Councilmember Jacobs.
Yes.
Councilmember McCullough.
Yes.
Councilmember Neal.
Yes.
Councilmember Sample Wynn.
Yes.
Councilmember Fisher.
Yes.
Mayor Kutcher.
Yes. We'll move on to from the city manager, number 1, please.
Number 1 is a recommendation that the quote from Fort Huron Electric Motor Works for $5,880.90 for the repair of a submersible pump motor for the Hancock Street Pump Station be accepted.
Is there a motion to approve?
Mayor Kutcher?
Yes.
Move for, from the city manager, number 1 be adopted.
Support?
Support.
Moved and supported. Any discussion?
I said one curiosity question. Throughout the year, when the second pump is activated, does that happen a lot, or is that just like a rare occurrence that 2 pumps are operating at once, or just curiosity?
Mayor and council members, with any significant rain event, we have significant rain events approximately 35 to 50 times a year. We would see the second pump come on.
Okay.
So it's only on an on-demand basis.
Okay. Any other questions?
No, just
Yes.
clarification. So normally there's only one pump that runs, except in heavy. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, in dry weather flow, in flow without footing drain flow, flow without infiltration through service leads and so on, normal sewer flows, one pump can handle the flows. Peak demand, Super Bowl Sunday at halftime, and rain events. Just a fact. In my business, it's a high demand period of time. And heavy rain events, the second pump will kick on for us.
What would happen if you have one pump running and the high water is coming through, or in the other situation, normal situation, the one pump breaks down and the other one isn't there to go? What happens in a catastrophic event?
Well, we use an automated programmable logic controller that feeds back to the water reclamation facility, wastewater plant, where we have an automated control system. There's intelligence at the pump station. So, and make certain I answer your question, I'm doing my best here. If one pump is running and only one pump is needed and that pump fails, the system kicks over to the next pump. It is also programmed to rotate throughout the pumps so that no one pump is running all the time. So let's say the demand is for one pump. Periodically, during a 24-hour period of time or during a week's period of time, we will distribute that flow across all 3 pumps. So we're getting average wear across the pumps. If one of the pumps fails, then one of the other pumps would take over for it. We have 3 pumps because we call it what's called an installed spare. 2 pumps can handle every case. The installed spare is there to make certain that if one of those pumps should fail, there's assurance that we wouldn't have any basement backups during high flows.
Okay, I guess that's what I was getting at, was what, in a catastrophic failure of the equipment, what ends up being the end result of this? And that's what I think what I heard is that
Yes, it would.
that we use auxiliary storage. which
The
is based on-
system would surcharge. We wouldn't be able to handle the flow at the pump station. That would cause surcharging up the line, and the net result of that is typically a basement backup.
All right, thank you. Any other questions?
Just an observation, Mayor Kutcher, it's good to see that a local company has the ability to handle our needs. So they are a good company.
Yeah, they are. They've done good work for us in the past.
Thank you. We'll take a vote, please.
Councilmember Jacobs?
Yes.
Councilmember McCullough?
Yes.
Councilmember Neal?
Yes.
Councilmember Sample Wynn?
Yes.
Councilmember Fisher?
Yes.
Councilmember Haynes?
Yes.
Mayor Kutcher?
Yes, resolution is adopted. We'll move on, recommendation is adopted, sorry. We'll move on to recommendation, or resolution number 1.
That would be to authorize payment to the St. Clair County Health Department in the amount of $5,000 for the fiscal year 2007-08 local match for the Port Huron Water Treatment Plant share of the drinking water monitoring and notification system.
Is there a motion to approve?
Mayor Kutcher?
Yes.
Move for the adoption of resolution number 1.
Motion
Support.
Made and supported. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll take the roll, please.
Councilmember McCullough?
Yes.
Councilmember Neal?
Yes.
Councilmember Sample Wynn?
Yes.
Councilmember Fisher?
Yes.
Councilmember Haynes?
Yes.
Councilmember Jacobs?
Yes.
Mayor Kutcher?
Yes, we'll move on to resolution number 3, please.
Number 3 would schedule a public hearing for September the 10th, 2007, to hear comments on the results of the budget roundtables conducted by Keziah Watkins, directing that the detailed report be available for public review in the city clerk's office, St. Clair County Library, and city's website, and directing the city manager to prepare an update of the utility rate study to include any changes which have occurred since its original presentation that would affect the projected 5-year rates.
Is there a motion to approve?
Mayor Kutcher?
Yes.
Move for the adoption of resolution number 3.
Support. Been moved and supported. Any discussion?
Mayor Kutcher?
Yes.
Just to answer Mrs. Burns' question, there is no vote scheduled for that evening. We'll probably be doing it at the following meeting. But also, I would like to maybe amend the motion if I can. I would like to see the city administration sort of do a budget overview before we have at the same time they bring back the update on the rate study. So we sort of give an idea where our budget dollars are divided. I think we all know where they might go, but we heard one gentleman say $113 million this year. Well, that isn't obviously general fund. Where's the breakdown and all that? If we can have administration just give us, an overview before anything else transpires that evening.
We'd be happy to do, in that presentation, do a little overview of the general fund, and because we'll be doing an overview of the water and sewer funds. I think we'd also like to do also the land purchase fund. There's been a lot of discussion about land purchase fund and how that works, and I think that would be helpful to people too, because we're using approximately $2 million a year out of the land purchase fund to help subsidize the sewer rates, and I think that would help the public. So we can put together a brief overview.
Yeah, a little budget 101 for everybody. Again, it's a review for us, but I think for the general public, they aren't aware of it, so if we can, sort of give them an overview, that'd be great.
Did you still want to include it as an amendment,
Or, I should go back to the people that made the motion, we can include it, but that, otherwise I would offer that as an amendment.
Yes, I have no problem adding that. Would that be a presentation that would be given? My understanding is what you're saying is there would be a presentation before we have the public
Correct.
hearing, so people would have a chance to.
correct.
Yes, absolutely. And let's add that to a presentation by administration prior to the public hearing.
Okay. So we've had a friendly amendment made. It's been accepted. Any other discussion? Hearing none, take the roll, please.
Councilmember Neal?
Yes.
Councilmember Sample Wynn?
Yes.
Councilmember Fisher?
Yes.
Councilmember Haynes?
Yes.
Councilmember Jacobs?
Yes.
Councilmember McCullough?
Yes.
Mayor Kutcher?
Yes. We'll move on to ordinance number 1, please.
Ordinance number 1 was first presented to you on August the 13th. It is before you tonight for its third and final reading. It is an ordinance to amend Chapter 24, Fire Prevention and Protection of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Port Huron for the purpose of adding an Article 3, Cost Recovery for the Fire Department Hazardous Materials Responses and Cleanup, to allow the city to recover costs for certain fire and emergency services.
Mayor Kutcher?
Yes.
Move that ordinance number 1 be given its third and final reading and adopted.
Support.
Support.
Been moved and supported. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll take the roll, please.
Councilmember Sample Wynn?
Yes.
Councilmember Fisher?
Yes.
Councilmember Haynes?
Yes.
Councilmember Jacobs?
Yes.
Councilmember McCullough?
Yes.
Councilmember Neal?
Yes.
Mayor Kutcher?
Yes, the ordinance is adopted. Council, at our last meeting, we had scheduled a meeting before our September meeting, September 10th meeting, to talk about the manager's performance. Since then, the committee has met, and Mark, if you want to review your recommendations for the council, I know we all got a copy of it.
Yes, council members Fisher and Sample Wynn and myself sat down to review the process we wanted to in the evaluation of the city manager. We came to the determination that the city manager, under his contract and under the Open Meeting Act, can request a closed session for his evaluation. We will honor that request. And in doing so, upon the completion of that closed session, we will be handing out the performance evaluation form that we have used in the past. We didn't make any changes to that, and individual council members can fill in the evaluation, give that back to the mayor, and then that will be compiled and be part of the manager's personnel file.
Very good. We had scheduled the September 10th date, and I think Councilman Haynes, you mentioned you could not be there. Is that correct?
I got a conference up in north part of
Okay.
Michigan, but seeing that everything that's going on, I might try to make a long trip back for this and after the meeting return back up north.
If I may, Mayor, we determined that just an hour or two before the council meeting was probably not going to be sufficient, and so we would probably recommend that we take a look at our calendars and do a different night, and so get it off the council meeting because we think it could be substantial, so time-consuming.
If that's acceptable, I'll have everyone polled, and we'll see if we can find a mutually agreeable date. Never an easy task for us, but, okay. Any other business to come before us? A promo?
I just have a question about we are then going to schedule budget workshops or community budget workshop, you're
Yes,
discussing?
to talk about the recommendations?
Right. And are we polling are you going to have Pat poll for those as well? Because for me, unfortunately, with my midnight schedule, I need to have time in advance, and I know Jim does too, he works evenings, so if we could poll those at the same time so we can come up with some dates that we can get together.
We will do that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jim?
I just want to announce that I'm back in my historic garb instead of the welcome baseball garb. But we do have the Port Huron Historic Home Tour coming up on September 16th, the Sunday. It's always the third Sunday in September, and it's always a fun thing to see a lot of the historic architecture in the city. We do a lot of advertising. We bring a lot of advertising outside the area. We bring quite a few people in to go through this and view these homes. Right now, it looks like we've got 8 structures on the home tour, so it's a pretty average size tour for us. Should work very well. Tickets are $10. When they're printed, they'll be available at Main Street and, of course, in the day of the tour at any of the homes. But it is a great time to see some of the wonderful architecture that we have here in Port Huron, both the homes, and then we actually are going to have one business on this tour also.
Very good. Any other announcements?
I just have a question for Jim. You keep celebrating our past, Jim. I'm wondering when you're going to look to the future.
A modern home tour?
No, the modern garb is all
That's
I
right.
was.
That's well, David just says history repeats itself, and those who don't remember the past are doomed to repeat it anyway. So, it is, I don't know, being the president of Old Town Historic Neighborhood and all, I just feel it's kind of my duty to stay in the celebrating the past. And actually, now that my wife has gotten pretty used to the mutton chop, she's looking forward to me keeping them after this. We'll see if I do that or not.
Very good. Further announcements? Now, a motion to adjourn would be in order.
Move to adjourn.
We stand adjourned.